Hi, I'm Cheryl Waters, and you're listening to Live on KEXP at Home. I'm very excited to be talking with Mia Berrin of Pom Pom Squad today. Hi, Mia.
Hi, how's it going?
It's great. It's so wonderful to be talking with you. I have absolutely been loving Death of a Cheerleader, your new album. I also liked the release before that as well, and I just can't stop playing it. And I want to ask you a million questions. I'm so glad you're here today.
Oh my gosh, me too. I have been listening to KEXP for a very long time. I've seen so many of these sessions, so I'm like just over the moon to be here.
Well, hopefully eventually we'll be able to have you live here in our studios in Seattle. Are you in Brooklyn right now?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
I think that I'm right when I say that you grew up in Florida. Is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in a couple different places. I was born in Long Island and then moved to Michigan, but I spent my formative teenage years in Florida.
Well, actually, I was born in the Bronx, and I grew up in South Florida, so that's why I asked,
Whoa!
because I actually don't run across too many people that grew up in Florida, at least not here in Seattle. So it always feels like something I bond with over
Yeah,
people. It's a different kind of upbringing for sure.
it's trauma bonding over being in Florida.
Exactly. Although I will have to say, I love the Pacific Northwest and all the things I do here, and I feel like I was meant to live here. But Florida's not such a bad place, at least in terms of being outside and being active for a kid to grow up. I feel like I was outside and in the water all the time as a kid.
Yeah, I'm a huge water baby. So I think, growing up, my parents and my siblings and I would take trips to Florida to go to Disney World. We were a Disney family. And so, we had been in Michigan for a while and just weren't really happy. And one day my parents were like, if we could move anywhere, where would we go? And we were like, Disney World. So we ended up moving to Orlando. I think I've grown to appreciate it more as an adult than I did then. It's a really sleepy town, and when you're like a restless adolescent, it feels stifling. And now I find it very relaxing, actually.
I love that you're a water baby. I definitely am. And in fact, my last name is even Waters. But did they have river country at Disney World when you were growing up?
I don't
That
think
was
so.
a little bit older than you. It was like a little side part where they've got all these little outshoots or offshoots off Disney World. And it was a whole river concept or water concept with like a big pirate ship that you could take the what do they call those things that you
The little
grab?
mast or whatever, steering
Yeah,
wheel.
and go
I
out over
don't
the water. And anyway, but we digress.
know.
Was music a big part of your life when you were growing up? It sounds like your parents were big music fans.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was an artist. He was a rapper, and my mom was just like a punk. Like she, was seeing the Smiths and the Cure as a teenager, and just kind of bouncing around in the New York scene. So I grew up with, you know, golden age hip hop on my dad's side, and punk and new wave on my mom's side, and we listened to a lot of music. I think I just learned about a lot of music from a really young age, and I've always been fascinated by music history, I think, because of that.
And when did you start getting the bug to make music on your own? And what inspired you to want to do that and know that you could do that?
I was pretty late in the game, actually. When I was younger, I wanted to be an actor, and that was actually the path that I followed for most of my life until I was 18. That was when I first had the initial inkling to start a band. I loved Riot Girl and grunge. That was sort of my, I feel like every kid goes through the moment of like digression from their parents' music, where you start to be like, well, what's my genre? And I really found a home in punk and Riot Girl, and also just New York DIY bands. I knew like every DIY venue as this like kid sitting in a bedroom in Florida. And it was like Baby's All Right was like the craziest place you could play, which, New York is like, it's a great venue, but it was like, I sold out my first show at Baby's All Right when Ow came out. So it's sort of like you get there and you're like, what now? That was the pinnacle for me. But, initially I just needed a form of expression that allowed me to use my own words and my own thoughts as opposed to embodying, somebody else's script, somebody else's ideas. So I started making music when I was 18 in my bedroom, and I didn't really show anyone at first.
And when did you start playing with other people? You made some beautiful videos for us, for the KEXP listeners, and your band look and sound great. You definitely seem bonded.
Oh, I love my bandmates so much. We all met kind of in a magical way, I feel like. I had been playing in an iteration of Pom Pom Squad with some guys I went to college with who were the first people that ever asked me if I wanted to play a show. And I'd never played on stage with a band before. It was incredibly intimidating, and I practiced in front of a mirror every day. I was watching my hands do the chords so that I could, practice not looking at my guitar while I played. But that situation just didn't end up working out. I think I felt a little pushed around just because they were all very technical, they could build amps, you know what I mean? And I was just learning, and I didn't really have any language to talk about music production. So after that version of the band kind of, dissipated, I decided to transfer to a music production program. And while I was there, I started kind of playing solo shows. And I think the second or third solo show I ever played, I met Shelby and Maria, who are my drummer and bassist, respectively. And Alex, who's the lead guitarist, came to my second ever show with the band. So we all met through Pom Pom Squad in some way. And now, we're all just this big enmeshed group. And I love them. They're just the most wonderful, accepting, talented people I've ever met. I love them so much.
Oh, I love to hear that. Well, you've achieved this beautiful mix of styles on Death of a Cheerleader. There's grunge, there's 50s and 60s pop, and you've said it was hard to describe your vision of the record to your bandmates. What did that initial conversation look like?
Well, I kind of started conceptualizing the sound of Death of a Cheerleader during the pandemic. And so we hadn't been playing together for, at that point, a couple months. Later would become, over a year. But initially the ideas kind of came to me as images and texture. So I think one of the first things I said to the band is I was like, I want it to sound like red vinyl and red velvet. And they were like, okay. Sure.
Were they humoring you, or did they get it?
They were humoring me initially. I feel like I was trying to write this, became crying. I was trying to write this string part, and I don't read music, honestly. I'm lucky that I have a good ear, and so when I hear a note, I can find it on the guitar and put it into a MIDI track in Logic. And I was trying to figure out this part, and I was like, well, I want it to be this orchestral arrangement and then just crash into a grunge song. And Maria was sitting with me in my apartment trying to figure it out, and I just got so frustrated. I couldn't figure out the right way to describe it. And I was like, never mind, I'm going to do it by myself. She's amazing. But I tend to be a very solitary writer initially. So I think I kind of wanted to save showing them most of it until I knew it was a really crystallized idea.
Well, let's watch some of the videos that you and your band created for us. It's Pom Pom Squad live on KEXP at home, and this is Drunk Voicemail. Also, we're going to listen to Be Good and Crying. Enjoy.
Know how to make me sad. Pressed flowers in the 'cause I think I really love you more than anyone can. I wanna tell you that I hate you, but it'd be a lie, 'cause I think I love you more than I am weak to try. I wanna tell you that I hate you, but I don't know how, when the truth is that I love you more than anyone else. Shine your light on me, and then I'm tapping on the glass again. Now I'm in love with everything I see, because you know that I'm your pet. You left a note before you left. It said, till then be good and wait for me. Kill me swiftly, I know you'll come back to me, when you were everything that I could need. One day when you come back again, I guess we'll see what happens then. But till then, be good and wait for me. Now we've found it, there's no way around it, 'cause I can't pretend this isn't meant to be. And I'll treat every day the same, but every night I'll scream your name. Till then, be good and wait for me. Till then, be good and wait for me. It hits me and it feels like a kiss. And they said, just write a song and you'll get over it. I learn the same thing over and over again. I can't feel anything. I'm crying. I'm crying. I make a game of breaking promises. If I'm a bitch, at least someone is. Make a list of arguments I didn't win. Naturally, I'm alone again. I'm crying. I'm crying.
You're listening to Pom Pom Squad live on KEXP at home. And Mia, those strings that you were talking about, they were on those last two songs. They're so beautiful.
Thank you so much. The string players in that video are Lydia, who plays cello, and Meitar, who plays violin. Lydia actually recorded with us on Crying, the track of the album. And it was arranged by a violinist named Camellia, who also played on the record. They absolutely killed it. It was so much fun to play live with strings.
Well, I find your music so approachable, both through your honesty and also your vulnerability, but also through your ability to poke fun at yourself. And that song Crying, which you just played, is a perfect example. Why was it important for you to incorporate humor into this record?
I think with my last EP, Ow, it was coming from a very sincere place of just frustration and anger and depression and heartbreak, which isn't to say that Death of a Cheerleader isn't sincere, but I think when I was a little bit younger than I am now, not much younger, I just was so angry. Music felt like the only productive place that I could put it. And now I think that I can name those feelings a little bit better and identify, oh, I'm feeling depressed. That's what that is. And it's, a chemical imbalance as opposed to just a thing that I do as a young person or feel as a young person. I think poking fun at it and kind of being able to look at it in a little bit more of a meta perspective helped me understand it better in a way. And also it's kind of like, if you can't laugh at yourself, I don't know. I think it was just, I sort of wanted it to describe that feeling of when you're like embarrassed about how sad you are, and you're just like, this girl, like get over it. Stop. You know what I mean? And I think crying was a fun way to just kind of like read myself for filth.
That's funny that you would say that because someone just sent me a little cartoon today where there's like a category in a record store and it says jazz over here and rock over here. And then there's a section that says sad music. And then there's a bunch of people just all rushing for the sad music.
Yeah, kind of.
There is something about that speaks to so many of us, though.
Yeah, well, there was this article that came out during the pandemic that was like, people only want to listen to happy music. And I was like, who? I don't know anybody who's listening to happy music right now. It felt, it feels like fake in a way when you're going through something as crazy as that, to listen to like, I love music. I love pop music. A huge pop music fan. But especially, during the pandemic, I had so much trouble listening to any new music. I think that's also what sort of led me to the kind of 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s numbers, led me to those influences. It just, I don't know, listening to anything that came out recently just felt almost like a harsh reminder of what couldn't be. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I'm wondering, did it take you to a place of comfort or peacefulness, or what was it about that made you want to jump back to older music?
I think, honestly, it just made the mundane existence feel more cinematic and exciting. When you're kind of just doing dishes and sitting on a couch and watching TV all the time, I was listening to I live with my partner, and I'm very, very lucky that my partner and I are super close because we survived a year of not seeing anybody else but each other. But it's kind of like, if we're sitting on the couch watching TV, listening to whatever punk grunge album we used to listen to, it feels sort of more normal than listening to like Paul Anka and like staring into each other's eyes, It just made things a little bit more romantic and exciting, and I got to kind of make up a movie in my head, instead of just like washing the dishes.
And it does sound like that influence of listening to all that music made it into Death of a Cheerleader.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of think of every project like a movie or like its own world. And it was really exciting to build the world around the music that kind of grew together. Sometimes the visual came before the song and sometimes the song came before the visual. And it was just really fun. It was a really different process than anything I've written before.
When did you record the album?
We recorded it in November, so during the pandemic, and Sara Tudson of Illuminati Hotties, who co-produced with me, flew in, and, it was a very, cautious process. We were there literally on the day that Joe Biden was elected. We were in the studio. So it was a very interesting time, just obviously with the crazy political situation and also the pandemic, all of us being masked, playing our instruments, and sort of having to form our bubble, all getting tested, multiple times throughout the process. A pandemic record.
Well, Sara and Illuminati Hotties are definitely KEXP favorites. And how did she help bring this record to life with you?
Sara is so talented. Sara is just, I don't mean this in any, I mean it as, I don't know, it's I feel like when you say that someone is competent, it sounds like just the bare minimum. But when I say competent, I mean she really is just on the level, knows exactly what she's doing, is so concise and able to communicate extremely well, with musicians and the people who are playing. And I think it was really fun. I studied music production, and it's not a muscle that I get to exercise as much as I would like to, but I really wanted to bring somebody on who could just give the record something that I couldn't, and she really, 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 really brought that. We have similar inspirations production-wise. We talked a lot about the Phil Spector wall of sound style of producing, and we both really committed to making it sound like something bigger than just a band playing in a room. So she just brought so much to the table. She's such an amazing creator and producer and artist. I really admire her a ton.
Well, it sounds like a match made in heaven, and you're actually co-producer on this record. How did you two work together? I know that she has a lot of mutual admiration for you as well, and enjoyed working with you immensely.
Oh, it's such an honor, really. She's just incredible. Well, I, wrote a lot of it with my computer, surprisingly. For most of the writing process, it was me, my guitar, and MIDI tracks. So I was programming a lot. And, by the time Sara and I met for the first time, I had, all the pre-production pretty much done. And, it's kind of cool. Some of the sounds from the demos made it onto the record. It all just sounds kind of like an elevated version of, what I had initially produced. And I just feel like we really were on the same page in so many ways. In the moments where we weren't on the same page, there was a great sense of compromise, I feel like. Yeah.
You've talked about your experience with imposter syndrome, and you've studied music production. You're incredibly proficient in logic, and yet you don't always feel comfortable calling yourself a producer. I've heard you say, and I recently had a similar conversation with Margaret Son of Miss Grit, who's incredibly competent, under your definition of the word, that's an understatement, and who, like yourself, is an incredibly skilled guitarist and producer and still struggles with these feelings of inadequacy. Have you connected with other musicians with this shared experience? And I'm curious to know, what are some of the successful ways that you've combated your own imposter syndrome?
Yeah, honestly, the people that I talk about it with the most are my bandmates, which, I feel really lucky because, again, all of them are so talented and all of them are so trained in their instrument. Everybody in the band has done lessons forever, has been playing forever, and it's just not the case for me. I think I learn fast, but I'm self-taught, and there is some lack of validity, quote unquote, to that, is teaching yourself on YouTube versus having a guitar teacher or drum or doing drum lessons or whatever. So I talk to them the most because a lot of the times my imposter syndrome manifests in band practice or even in the studio. I had a really, really, really difficult time kind of calling myself a co-producer, and I went through a lot of asking myself if I even deserve to take on that title, or, I think part of overcoming it is, one, having people around you who you really trust. Sara and I actually at the end of the process had this amazing conversation. After we recorded, everybody kind of came back to my apartment, and we all, had drinks and cheersed and did the thing, and everyone ended up leaving or falling asleep, and Sara was staying at our place and leaving the next day to go back to California, and she and I just kind of stayed up late and talked, and she's like, a lot of people want a co-production credit as kind of a vanity title, but you really earned it. And that was a big moment for me. I think, again, hearing it from somebody who's just so accomplished, I shouldn't have to wait to hear it from somebody else to feel valid, but hearing that from somebody that I trust and care about meant a lot to me. And it's the same thing with band practices, where I'll talk about, lately my thing is I'm like, I can't sing, I'm not a singer. And they're like, just shut up, relax. Alex always goes, you need to calm down and settle down. That's what you need to do. So he's hilarious. But I honestly think talking it out instead of letting it fester, because I think sometimes when you let it fester, it manifests in kind of being angry towards other people and needing to prove yourself to other people. I've seen it, in a lot of creative situations where when somebody's insecure, they combat because they don't want the kind of armor to come down. And so you're wrong for ever questioning their talent. And, I've been there. It's like everyone's been there, I feel like, who deals with this. But I think just kind of practicing talking about it. I journal a lot. I'm a big journaler, and that helps me kind of process what I'm dealing with. It's it doesn't stop. I can't say that I'm healed from it. I feel like yesterday I was talking about the fact that I can't sing. But I also just want to kill the inner Guitar Center bro in my head telling me that I'm not good at things, I don't know.
Well, when people tell you that and give you that validation, are you allowing yourself to take that in?
That is a great question, Cheryl. I don't know. I think you can only hear things as much as you're ready to hear them. And sometimes I feel like I can take it in, and other times, I also think just being a marginalized person, I deal with this kind of double consciousness of feeling like I need to work harder than everybody else to get as far. So it sometimes feels like nothing I do is ever enough, but I think I'm just trying to appreciate the little accomplishments where I can. This is a huge accomplishment for me, honestly, is being here and, appreciating being with my bandmates, appreciating the opportunities that I've been afforded, and, the team that I've built around me, and the choices that I've made in building a team. So, we get through it. It's hard, but it's, there are these really beautiful moments of discovery in that process.
Well, after such an extended period away from your band, it must have been wonderful to collaborate with others to complete this record.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's only so much you can do on your own. There are those artists that are kind of polymaths and really can produce and perform an entire record, in their bedroom or in a garage and just put it out the next day. But I think I feel really lucky for everything that other people brought to the table, and especially the respect that I was given to execute my vision to the fullest extent, but to kind of be lent all of these people's talent. It really is amazing that so many amazing people were willing to lend their time and energy to me and to this.
So stop and think about what that means about how they think about you.
Wow. Well, what a concept.
Well, you created some wonderful videos with this group of people that you admire so much. It sounds like a mutual admiration. And let's watch a couple more of those now. We've got a couple of rockin' tunes coming up next from Pom Pom Squad live on KEXP at home. This is Lux.
It might be something in your tone that you would leave me here to find my own way home. You can take my pace, leave me rotting like the leaves, but I won't ever let you say you cared about me. My collar in your fist, pulling me into your kiss, and suddenly I knew my body was not my own. You push and I give way, collapsing inward like a cave, and I feel naked without taking off any of my clothes. High school dance in the cloud of peach alcohol, I let myself get drunk on the idea that you loved me. 'Cause in here I'm suffocating, but out there I feel so small. What a wonder to be anything at all. When I hear your pretty words, I should be listening to the sound of my feet against the ground in the opposite direction. How do you expect me to figure myself out when I cannot tell the difference between bad and good attention? Everybody telling me that life goes on. Meet me tonight in the garage. I'll show everybody telling me that life goes on. Meet me tonight in the garage. Meet me tonight in the garage. You said open up your mouth and tell me what you mean. I said I'm gonna marry the scariest girl on the cheerleading team. Press your teeth into my neck and watch me bruise. Tomorrow wake up feeling so confused. I'm squirting out of my skin. Is this really happening to me? I'm learning how to be someone I could put my faith in if it really came down to me. Just 'cause you
That was Head Cheerleader, and before that, Lux. It's Pom Pom Squad live on KEXP at home. I'm talking with Mia Berrin today, and you made a video for Lux where you recreated shots from the 2000 film The Virgin Suicides, directed by Sofia Coppola, and it was based on Jeffrey Eugenides' 1993 best-selling novel, which I love. I'm actually just a big fan of everything he did. So that's just like a winner upon a winner. What a great inspiration. Tell me about that. I read that you wanted to make that video since you were 15 or 16 years old.
Yes. Yeah. Well, The Virgin Suicides was one of my first favorite movies. When I was probably early high school, I think is when we got like the streaming subscription to Netflix, my family. And so I kind of would just stay up late and watch forbidden movies on Netflix. But I became a big movie buff for that reason. And I think The Virgin Suicides really touched me for its depiction of depression and mental health. And I related to the girls feeling stifled by kind of a male gaze and a view of them that they didn't have any control over. And that was more self-aggrandizing for the people viewing them than for the girls themselves. And I think I was in that stage where, you start to be aware of male attention. And as somebody who didn't know that I was queer yet, I think I tried extra hard to receive male attention. And it wasn't in a healthy way. So Lux in particular, I just really, could see myself in her and sort of understand myself better through that character.
You do think very visually. You've already talked about this today, but visual and aesthetics play a key role in your music, I feel. And it's hard for me to listen to a Pom Pom Squad song without the impeccable art direction flashing in my head. At what point in the songwriting process do you start considering the visual element?
Well, sometimes they're kind of symbiotic. They kind of grow together. Trying to think of a good example. Well, the idea, Death of a Cheerleader, this image of kind of being like, I had that title. I think my partner showed me a text from like 3 years ago where I was like, I think I'm going to name an album Death of a Cheerleader. So that kind of title came to me early on. And then I just loved this idea of being buried under a plastic world. It felt like a really apt metaphor for what I was dealing with at the time, which was kind of, coming out to myself and allowing myself to really accept my identity as a queer person. And prior it just sort of felt like I was like wearing someone else's skin. Like I was making choices that weren't for me. They were for this idea of me that I had, I thought that I needed to occupy. So that image was one of the first things to happen. And then from there, I kind of just built off of, a love story that I wanted to tell. So a song like, Head Cheerleader, I don't know. I sort of had that idea in my head of doing like an all-white cheerleading look, something that kind of felt more fantastical than realistic. I don't know. I started mood boarding the album as this kind of like Willy Wonka, David Lynch fantasy landscape. And the music and the visuals kind of all built around that.
It sounds like you're creating a visual where you can see yourself in the picture. And I've heard you talk in interviews about the need to create space for yourself when you were young because you didn't feel a total sense of belonging due to, at least in part, by the fact that you didn't see yourself represented in your surroundings and in the media. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you can't be what you can't see. And I never saw a path for somebody who was multiracial and queer and interested in music and, interested in acting even, and all of the, I grew up on pop culture. I was very much raised on pop culture, and so were my parents. And so a lot of my cultural references are from TV and movies and music. And, when you don't see yourself in the world, you just assume that there's no place for you at all, that there's no space that exists. And I've learned the lesson in the hard way so many times, where I've always kind of told myself, once I meet this group of people or these artists, that I'll assimilate into this space and people will finally see me and accept me. And honestly, so many times in my career so far, of my very short career so far, have I made it to those tables and just been told, you can't sit here, And so my mom actually gave me that piece of advice after I went to my first big party in New York and met all of my idols, and it felt so alone and anxious. And I told her, why did I spend so much time obsessing over these people who don't care about me? And, she said, stop trying to be like these people and start trying to be these people, be that person for somebody else. She's like, any space that you want to take up, you're going to have to make yourself. And it's hard. It's really frustrating to hear that, but it has been the most valuable piece of advice that's followed me through everything. It kind of underlies everything that I've done and that I do. So, I think media allowed me to kind of collage parts of my personality and say, watching the Virgin Suicides, here's a young woman who deals with depression. So there are young women that deal with depression. Watching a movie But I'm a Cheerleader is okay, so you can be femme and gay. It's sort of I don't know. It was media was my kind of social education in so many ways. And, I was bullied a lot growing up. So you just kind of learn you're different, and then you either have to drown in it or swim through it. And I think I'm still swimming through it, but yeah, I don't know. I think Death of a Cheerleader kind of comes from that place of using reference and using homage and using bits and pieces of the media that made me who I am to tell my own story and to, make something that feels complete within itself.
Well, I've heard you say that you would like to make the world around you an expression of your passion. And it seems like you're doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to, and I try to. I think space is a really strange and important thing, and I think a lot about my younger self and what she would have needed to see. So I'm trying.
Well, in closing, I want to throw some more of your words back at you, because something I read that you said really impacted me. And you said, as long as there's something to learn about yourself and about the art you make, there's always going to be something to make. And I don't know, I kind of tear up as I just said that.
Wow.
It's a very powerful statement, and we can all continue to learn no matter what point in life we are. And the more we learn about ourselves, the more we can do with that.
You're going to make me tear up too.
What a way to end, right? And then we have a big cry fest.
Yeah. That's what I make. It's a big cry fest.
Well, it's been so wonderful to talk with you. Absolutely love Death of a Cheerleader, the new Pom Pom Squad album, and I'm very excited to see what comes next for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. You're listening to Pom Pom Squad live on KEXP at home. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to all of our wonderful listeners who subscribe to our YouTube channel and support KEXP. Check out more at kexp.org.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.